Okay, so third and final slide here for our opening 13 poetry terms. And these are, again, some of the basic features that make up most poetry. On the last slide in the last video, I referenced the idea of both rhyming and rhythm. So a rhyme is a repetition of a similar sound throughout poetry, usually at the end of a line, though it can happen at the beginning or the middle of a line of poetry. Um, and this is, like I said, fairly common even when you get into things like modern music that has some poetic features. Um, but usually when we think of poetry, that's kind of what we think of. We think of if you have words that rhyme at the end of each line, well, then it's a poem. Um, and that's on a very basic level. One of the most common features of poetry is that the lines rhyme with one another. Rhythm is another very common feature of poetry broadly. It's just a musical pattern of syllables. So the words and the smaller collection of letters that make up those words within the poems have a certain beat or have a certain meter that they follow. So, like the haiku that we began the first video with talking about, a haiku has a rhythm, and that's 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the middle line, and 5 syllables in the last line. We'll look at some examples in the next 2 days of rhythm within poetry, but this again is one of the most common features of poetry in general, is that it sounds a particular way, but there's a way that it can be presented or read that sounds musical. Okay. And the last element that's very common to poetry in general is just repetition, right? So the repeated use of any element of language, whether again that's a repetition of a rhyme, a repetition of a sound, as in rhythm, repetition of one word, repetition of one sound, or even the repetition like you see in songs where the chorus comes back multiple times. That's a type of repetition where in literature, if you wrote the same paragraph 3 times in one chapter, it would be kind of weird, and you go, "Wait, why am I going backwards?" But with poetry and with songs, if you repeat the chorus, you understand, oh, that's just a feature of poetry or a feature uh, of a song that makes it more memorable and kind of points out this is the main part of the song. Last one is of our 13 terms. It's an onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia, hopefully you're familiar with this, is a word that sounds like the noise that it makes. So think of like the old Batman comics. If he goes pow or bang or crunch, he's punching somebody. And written on the page is those words so that you can kind of form that sound in your brain. If you have questions, let me know during office hours. These are the 13 terms that you have so far. And so with that being said, I do want to take just a couple seconds here to go over to our um, our poetry terms here. So today in this slide, we did numbers 15 through 23 in all of these slides. And then we also did rhyme number 1, rhythm and repetitions number 6 and 7, and onomatopoeia number 14. So I know we're going a little bit out of order again, just like we did with the literary terms, but those are the 13 that today you're going to follow these instructions. Knowing that you're going to have an assessment on these coming up on April 30th, and then they're also going to be on the final exam. You're going to take each term with the definition that I give you and make a flashcard. Now, I know it says here that they have to be by hand. I'm going to allow you to type them just because we're learning remotely. So if you want to use Quizlet, go ahead. But you can also write them and then take a picture every time you have to submit your assignment. One side has the term, the back has the definition. You don't have to write your name on each one. Again, partially because of our unique circumstance here. But what you will need to do is for all 30 of these terms and then the 20 drama terms that are on the other Word doc, you're going to have to make flashcards. And I will walk you through each one, especially as we start reading poems and we start reading Romeo and Juliet. I will actually give you pieces of poetry and things to show you exactly how those terms are working, what they mean, how the author is using them, so that they make more sense. But for this one, just kind of our general background of poetry, this is all I have for you. So right now, that's your task. Make 13 flashcards of these 13 terms, and then either post a picture or your Quizlet link to Google Classroom to submit the assignment. Thank you, and have a good day.